Good day and welcome everybody to this next edition of Unleash with FTEM, Unleash with From the Experts Mouth. And today we have with us a very special guest, Winny Patro. Welcome, Winny, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me in this show, Rajiv. And congratulations on the initiative as well.
Yeah, thank you, Winny. Winny is an IIM Calcutta alum and he's an entrepreneur running Recordent, of which he's the co-founder and the CEO. He's been involved with the Andhra Pradesh government in the innovation, startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And prior to that, he's got the IIM community together in the form of IIM Network, which was another very interesting initiative, bringing together the alums of IIMs across the entire country. Winny, maybe we can start with a little bit of background about yourself.
Sure, Rajiv. I have to start from the place that I belong to. I belong to Vizag. Born, brought up there. I did my engineering, post-engineering, like any other engineering student those days. I also took up a software job. Didn't last for long. Then I realized it was my cup of tea. After a very short stint at a software company, I started an NGO supporting children of low-end schools and underprivileged. Then I went to IIM Calcutta. After IIM Calcutta, so I had the opportunity to sort of work in the research consulting space. Before I started off IIM, so IIM was co-founded by me and IIM was The idea was to sort of build a platform for senior management professionals in the country, which is a closed group networking platform. Through IIM Network, we've also been able to do a lot of interesting work. So I happened to, in fact, set up the joint venture for Decathlon in India. This was all before I joined the government. So I belong to Vizag and belong to Andhra Pradesh, which got bifurcated in 2014. So what we did was some of my network team, we moved them to Vizag so that we could create sort of atmosphere and employment. I was asked by the advisor, the chief minister, to come and build two important portfolios for the state of AP. One was to increase the employment of the state, and two was to build the innovation policy and build the innovation ecosystem. That was my stint with the government. So today I run a platform called Recordent, which helps small and medium businesses reduce their risk and exceed credit and grow securely. So the underlying purpose and thing that excites me personally is our ability to help these SMEs, and in turn the SMEs, if they grow, they will be able to create a lot more jobs in the country.
That's quite a mix, starting off with regular jobs, having your own NGO, bringing the IIM community together, getting Decathlon kind of ventures into the country, and then working with the government. So, which of course is one of the most intriguing things. I just want to touch upon this whole aspect of working with the government, particularly in the innovation and startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem. Can you tell us how do things look from their standpoint? Is it any different or?
Definitely, there is a lot of difference when you see from the bird's eye view. So having that view is one part of it, and knowing that, okay, you are in a position to contribute from that view is something that definitely is an exciting part of being in the European space. I was fortunate enough, I would rather say that, because I was also one of those people who always sort of pointed fingers at the government or complained about things not being in the order or the way it should have been. It's so difficult for you to be in a very large system. So governments are pretty much a large system. Being there and making that change faster is very difficult. Point one. Point two is that it's in the very early stages I've realized it's not easy for an entrepreneur, especially like being an entrepreneur like me, to get into government, which has its own space at which runs. But fortunately, I was working with the team and the leadership, which also thinks like me. Babu Naidu was the chief minister of the state then. He himself was a visionary, as a sort of a techno-visionary. He was taking a session on blockchain, how blockchain can impact uplift the lives of citizens, and he was taking a session by himself. So imagine, that you have such a leader, sort of driving the state, and that culture sort of gets used into the other people in the team. So I think I had the opportunity to be in that space when he was the chief minister, and his son was the minister whom I was working with. So he was a Stanford alum. was not so difficult. And most importantly, my first colleague, which was an IIM officer who was an alumni of IIM Indore, then also a fellowship from IIM Ahmedabad. So my life was much easier, I would rather say that. And there were other team members. They have built companies and listed them on NASDAQ and also sold them to kind of the large corporations. So they were also part of the government. See, if I look at, even the secretary was an IS officer who was like walk the talk. So I was fortunate enough to be part of that team, which is super charged and had everything. So when I joined, I started building teams. I started recruiting people from other IIMs and also started recruiting people from the industry. So we were able to create such an atmosphere to drive high performance. That doesn't happen often, especially with many governments.
That's very interesting because it kind of breaks the stereotype that one associates with government and government departments and the bureaucracy. And the interesting thing is that it was almost like carving out a separate ecosystem within the government machinery, which has its own DNA, which is more aligned to the entrepreneurial and the innovation ecosystem.
In fact, we thought about authoring or writing a book on how we did entrepreneurship in the government.
Yeah, so that will, I'm sure, be an interesting read for the audiences and the reader. While on the one hand, you brought in all these external forces, and there were some supporters, but you would still have had to face the resistance and the old school machineries. How was that experience? Because the pace is certainly very different. For approvals and moving things around, you still need to go through the standard bureaucracy and red tape.
Yes, definitely. I was consuming so much pressure. I was absorbing rather so much pressure. There was definitely a lot of pressure, especially when you are in a public-facing roles, in public service, because it's not about one flow. It's also about people questioning. So every decision you make and every step you take has to be very well thought through, and then has to be thought through from all perspectives, and especially every penny that you spend is a taxpayer's money. There were also cases where you knew that you were running things faster and moving at a pace at which others are not able to move. There is also in this whole lot of the bureaucratic and hierarchical system, there are people who try to sort of put pressure on you. There are people who try to sort of blame things on you or put some blocks in front of you to sort of so that you don't go faster. So there were definitely a lot of such cases that I had to face. Some of the critical things which becomes very difficult is when sort of media also try to put pressure and put things that you're doing and then things that you're not doing and so on and so forth. And you're always in the eyes of the media when you're in such roles. It's so what I've learned, no matter what, everyone that you work with, you have to be really, really be good with, right? And you have to be into their shoes and understand them and sort of deal with them rather. I personally sort of built relationship with the media actually helped a lot to relieve the pressure. So there were cases where senior media people calling me up and saying that, there are rumors that are happening against you. People are saying this. The media themselves came forward and said that, before it comes out, why don't we do a good story about, let's so the whole lot of management. I think I was fortunate, I would say, because of the kind of relationship I had been able to build with the media. They were always forthcoming. They were rather giving me a lot of intelligence information before even it reached me, right? So that way, I think I would say I've been able to absorb the pressure, especially in a very, very high tense environment. That because I was able to sort of build a very strong relationship with everyone in the ecosystem who has influence directly or indirectly.
A couple of things resonate very well, and they are kind of universal mantras no matter which situation you are in. I think one of the key things you mentioned is empathy. Putting yourself in other people's shoes when you are looking at your relationships with them, not merely to look at what you need from them, but what would their reaction be, and what it would be if you were in their in their position. So I think that is key, and if this one simple thing everybody does, then life universally would be so much better for everybody around us.
Yeah.
You spoke a few times about handling pressure. And apart from making peace with others and maintaining good relationships with others, I believe it's also important to have that sort of inner peace. And in a conversation we had earlier, you spoke about how you have come to terms with yourself through spirituality and some of the other mental models that you've developed. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. They say that universe conspires if your vision is for larger good and you have things that you want to do for larger than your life. That way, I was sort of fortunate enough to start exploring or rather questioning on a personal trend. This has all started when my wife announced, our first baby, and it happened on my birthday. Or I think on the same day or probably the next day, I started reading Gita. Because it was an excitement. You started giving a life to someone else, right? So I think that's where it all started. I think slowly when I joined the government in 2017, I always felt all right. The you don't you're not coming from administrative services or civil services, and you basically coming from completely from outside. And this is something that you never sort of asked for. Somebody came in and asked you to create this, right? So that way I thought, so it is very important that you got the position, and it's important for you to sort of make an impact, and whatever it takes, make sure that you drive it, right? So from a spiritual standpoint, if the fact that no matter what, how much the high tension and the pressure that is coming in, what is important for you to be is that you make sure what's getting fed into your mind and body is important, and then you have limited time and ensure these two are dimension one and dimension two, which has good control, which you can control. The dimension 3 cannot be controlled at the time. So therefore, with that thought process, as it started during those days, I think when I was with the government specifically, it wasn't evolved so much in my thinking, but I think what was pretty much I was clear about the mind part of it. So I was, no matter what, I never reacted to anything. I never reacted to anything in my profession. Always responded, and that was, I think, surprising factor to many of the senior IAS officers also, who thought I would react to things when people were accusing, or people were coming up with things that you're not that were not meant to be. So that spiritual thinking of what is being fed into the mind, how the mind needs to sort of respond rather than react to it. That's where my spiritual journey started, Rajiv. I think over a period of time, it has evolved into different dimensions as well. Like I said, body and time, and that all happened thanks to the books. I would say one is Gita, another is Chanakya in You from Radhakrishna Pillai, and then a few other books. I think it's not that what you follow from the Gita. It's about some level of understanding, some level of perspective, right? So and you understand from life, other just not your life, from people around you. Running a startup in India at a fast pace, especially with limited funds available, constraints, resources, and so on and so forth. And just to give you an example, it took 3 to 6 months for me to adopt back to the startup culture. So when I was a CEO in the government, I had like 2 personal assistants and 1 executive assistant. It was hardly any time that I had the chance to see even my own emails, right? And in many cases, I didn't even know my driver's phone number, right? So that was how the bureaucracy comes with this whole thing called Andros, right? Sort of a thing. From there to moving back to entrepreneurship, doing things on own. For me, it took me 3 to 6 months, but I don't think it would have happened so fast if I was not spiritually aligned, because the spirituality levels your ego completely. Over a period of time, that the other dimensions, 2019, like I said, I realized the second dimension is body, where you need to feed what you need to feed. So I've always been a meat eater. I thought I should take it slow. 2020, I left egg, and then 2021, I left a good part of dairy. So the journey continues, I think, but the fact that that you are not just a role that you're playing at work, but I think there's you're also playing a role of being very disciplined and committed to the MBT, mind, body, and time, the philosophy of mind, body, and time. So when you know that, when there is a different dimension, that you're living your life. It's easy to take pleasure on the other side.
Yeah, that's quite profound actually. Combining the elements of mind, the body, and opposing it against the dimension of time, which is not really controllable in our hands. And I think it all boils down to the element of consciousness. It's a journey, so from the zeroth or the surface level to one level, 2 levels deep. And over a period of time, maybe you go down 3-4 layers.
You're right, because moving from one level to another level. In fact, in the last 6 months, I'm consciously practicing few things. Like, for example, giving importance to the clothes that you wear. When I say giving importance to clothes that you wear, doesn't mean that you wear good clothes and all of that, but ensure that your clothes are not sort of thrown away here and there, and then ensure that they're always taken care of. Or when you get up from the bed, fold your own blanket, right? These are all few things, because the clothes are giving respect to you and respect them back, right? And to make a piece of cloth, it takes gallons of water. So it is connected to your planet Earth, right? Because our body is made out of planet Earth. We are not just fallen from somewhere. We're not, right? We're not aliens. We're not fallen from somewhere. So our body is flesh and blood is made from the planet Earth. So I think the like you pointed out, the point, what is the underlying fundamental aspect around is very important. And that when that exists, and a lot of it, you don't feel it. Oh, doing this is harder, right? That goes away. So a lot of people come and ask me, do you love your work? Why? First thing, why people ask. Second, what does it mean not loving, and what does it mean loving, right? You know why you're doing it, right? You know why you're doing it, and you do it, right? And people sort of come with subjective things, loving and not loving, do you rate it, and so on and so forth, right? So it's like, it also sort of happened with my kids also, right? So when you're a father, you're a father. There is nothing being good or bad, and you are, but then you do it as that. There is a lot of subjectivity comes into the picture, but any subjectivity goes away, especially for you yourself. The subjectivity should not be there when you know the underlying purpose. One of the famous quotes I strongly believe in and keep telling my team also. There is this incident that happened at NASA when John F. Kennedy was visiting, to NASA. Everybody was waiting to watch him or greet him and sort of catch a glimpse and shake him and all of that. But there was one worker who was busy in sweeping the floor, and he didn't really bother to even check whether he was entering or whatever. So he was still sweeping, and then John F. Kennedy asked him specifically, "What do you do?" And he says, "I'm helping man to go to the moon." Right? So he found that purpose, and it didn't stop there. And I heard stories after that he was asked, that sweeper was asked to, take bigger roles. And apparently he's saying that, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I know this is my role to be played for this life. I think to reach that, it's very difficult for many people. But I think when you know the purpose, you don't really feel the pressure. That's very much what it is. And this MBT, so the mind, body, and time part of it, like I said, one level to another. Like I gave you an example of clothes, even for the matter of the fact, food. So people keep complaining about food. I don't like food. I don't like this. Look, I mean, you're talking about options, right? So fundamentally, let's understand the food is something that you're privileged, right? Point one. Point two is simple things like respecting it, right? When I say respecting it, there are people that I know, for example, they leave a lot of food, that is disrespecting. Then they're unattending the food, disrespecting, right? Don't disrespect anything that gives you power, right? Whether it's a clothes or whether it is food, same thing. Mind, right? Knowledge. There, I'm sure a lot of us being told growing up, don't, books and pens and all of that, right? They say that don't keep them, or don't put near the feet and all of that. People say it is knowledge, that's why you don't do it. But the underlying part of it is that there is certain respect it demands, right? So that underlying assumption is something that is not thought through. And when people, and that kind of questions are asked, or whether even if it's preached in the right way, I think it makes a lot of difference for everyone.
So,
yeah. In fact, in the recent times, one of my friends who was with Salesforce asking me, how do I understand the larger purpose of my role? I said, the reason why you're not able to understand the larger purpose of the role, maybe you're not connected to the planet properly, or you're not connected to the socio-economic, the sphere of our own, surroundings. So I told her, look, Salesforce is about what? I think you're providing CRM solutions. Now, you provide CRM solutions to businesses, and businesses who are offering solutions to others. Look, at the end of the day, if it's a B2B CRM, you're primarily helping other businesses to grow. They're creating jobs. Because of you, they're able to get more customers. So fundamentally, you're powering businesses, and every business that gets grown, they create more jobs, they create livelihoods. Look, think through that. If you're thinking that just going for a 9 to 5 job and doing the Salesforce and coding and all of that, look, you can't be happy. Come on, how can you be happy?
From at least my perspective, what I've seen clearly two categories of people or organizations. One which are purpose led and which are more aligned to the purpose or the problem in society that they are trying to solve or the change that they are trying to bring. And the other one which are driven more by materialistic things or goals or targets or stuff like that, which could either be in the case of an employee, okay, I want my salary at the end of a 9 to 5 job, or in the case of an entrepreneur, I want to become a unicorn in the next 5 years. These days, maybe 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, right? But at the end of the day, if the focus is not on the purpose or the core problem that you're trying to solve or the change that you're trying to bring, it wouldn't last for too long, right? So it's very interesting you mentioned this at this juncture in the conversation, because we've spoken a lot about spirituality, consciousness, awareness, introspection. So now let's jump ship to your role at Recordent. And given all of this discussion that we've had around spirituality, around the innovation ecosystem, etc., how does this translate into your entrepreneurial streak? Firstly, in terms of the problems that you're trying to solve at Recordent. Secondly, I couldn't help but notice that the pandemic probably hit us maybe 1 year down the line when you had started Recordent. So, how was that experience been? Because I'm sure it would have been a challenge as well.
Yeah, in fact, it wasn't even 1 year. It was much before that. The pandemic part. I think 2019 October is when we started sort of testing the waters. By the time we had some feedback from the ground, it was already Feb. I think March the lockdowns started, so we had to revisit a lot of things, right from the way we were building teams to the way we were working, structurally, in fact, the target market. So the pandemic, in a way, well, of course, I would call it a blessing in disguise for us, especially. The reason is it allowed us to sort of reflect back a lot more in the market, because pandemic, when it started, when the lockdown started, businesses were closed, and a lot of businesses have been hit with cash flows. And so when we realized, I think the small and medium enterprises are the ones which are in need of a product like what we're building. They've all been already in the stress environment of not having payments coming on time. Therefore, for most of them, initially to come onto a platform like us and use and sort of rather test the platform, it was not a very Herculean task. At the same time, the challenge was making them believe in the digital adoption. Because there was a belief, but the fact was that SMEs themselves for the first time had to sort of move to the Zooms of the world on this online, the way online working, structures. So they were already adopting one thing of it. When we go out and tell them to do more things, I think they're ready to receptive and all of that. But I think there was too much of tech being introduced to these SMEs in a single go from the lockdown one. So when we were building all of this, I think interesting part was building teams and building everything from homes, right? So when we launched our MBT product in 2020 October, so we did not even meet our product people or tech people. Never, it was all happened online. So literally build company from homes. So and recruit people without meeting them. So that was definitely an interesting part, interesting journey that we've had. So that way, one of the key challenges, of course, was also to build the camaraderie among the teams, which is not easy when you don't have physical, meetings happening or physical workshops or things like that. So the reason is, of course, you don't really want to catch up casually on the phone call unless you're asked to do that, right? Unless you're compelled to do that. And then people were also having too much of screen time. You can't push them, right? There's too much of screen time already. You can't push them to network over screens. So these were all some difficulties. The building culture was one of the difficult tasks, and I strongly believe in building culture, coming from kind of a background that I come from, and the kind of conscious life that I live. So culture is important, but that building that still is a concern, and still people are got used to working from home, right? So it's still a hybrid model, and still figuring out how do we build a strong bond and culture.
Right. So most of the team that you have at Recordent would have joined remotely, right?
All of them,
All of them have joined
all of
remotely.
them.
Okay.
Except
Right.
just one or two everyone. We are now close to 50, except one or two everyone joined remotely.
Okay. What are some of the steps that you've taken to bring about a consistent culture and have the team kind of bind together? Because that's a big challenge every organization is facing.
Yeah,
And
I'd be happy to answer this question maybe next year's game time, because at this point of time, I'm actually still figuring out a good solution. We're trying
right.
different things. We're playing one day and night cricket match a month. Then we are having this group gatherings and things like that. Imagine people don't turn up to offices because they're all given a hybrid work structure, but then they're mandated to come up and play a cricket match. So there is at least a few things that we're getting mandated. So we're still trying things. What works and what doesn't work, we'll have to just wait and see.
Right. Yeah, I guess, we are in the middle of a massive flux or transformation in work cultures. I
Yes.
think we have kind of moved 180 degrees from work from office to work from home to work from anywhere to, work as you please. And now people, of course, organizations wanting people to come back and work from office to a very large extent. And that has in turn, received severe backlash, I guess, with attrition rates, particularly in IT being at all-time highs. So, yeah, I think it's your tryst with spirituality which kind of leads you to give this answer that you're still figuring out. Otherwise, yeah, otherwise a lot of people would claim that they have figured this out and solved this problem in the
It's
last
not,
6 months.
because we don't know what's still in the box.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, Rajay, one of the key challenges that I feel, really not good about is that there are workforces where you're asked to work from home, or they don't have good facilities to work from home, and then how do you create atmosphere for people? And second is the professional culture that so not all of them come from affluent societies, point one, or to have good environment. Second is that not all of them come from an educational families, fully educated families. So, and then the third of it is that not all of them have had the privilege to go to very good colleges or had great gurus. Or India has always been had a crisis of having good gurus, especially in the last 10-15 years. So therefore, I think it's not easy for a country like India, and then for startups like ours, especially, to get the top talent, right? And then you have to sort of settle with the talent and then groom them. And the grooming process is, I would say, very, very difficult and challenging when you don't have people coming to your place and working, or when you don't have the contact hours, because the most of this happens by seeing and observing things, and so overhearing, and all of that, I think, makes a lot of it, right?
Right.
So it is definitely to be addressed. I don't think anyone has really come up with a solution. If they've come up with a solution, I don't think TCS and Infosys Wipro would have made the work from office mandatory now. So at least I don't believe that we have solution. We'll see how it's going to take place.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think things are in a state of flux and we are all still figuring out. And I guess this journey will continue for some more time until there is some sort of
Yeah,
a stable structure. But, definitely it will not be, my guess, it will not be in one extreme or another. It will probably
yeah,
be somewhere in between. And models will become much more nuanced, I would imagine, depending
correct.
on the organization. It wouldn't be a one size fits all for sure. Speaking of the workforce, a lot of people in the workforce are quitting jobs. We are talking about the great resignation, we are talking about the great realization. The entrepreneurial ecosystem is, of course, booming, and a lot of people are attracted to start off their own ventures or have already done so in the last couple of years. I think that transition from employment to entrepreneurship is probably at an all-time high in this current phase right now and over the last couple of years or so. So, given that you've had multiple entrepreneurial streaks and you've been in the government, you've built communities, you've built startups, what would be your key pieces of advice to people who want to be on their own, particularly during these times?
Yes, in fact, before even the advice part of it, the point that you made, great resignation, right? What is it called? Is it a great recession or a great resignation?
Yeah, so people call it by multiple names. There's great resignation, there is great realization, and yeah, there are other things as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said, underlying is that a lot of people want to become entrepreneurs and all of that. In a way, I think it had to happen, but I thought this is accelerated because of COVID. What COVID did is that it allowed you to work from home, and when nobody is watching you, you want to make yourself maybe work for one or more projects, or see how do I get make more money. For an average software engineer in India, let's talk about software, but that's pretty much the large workforce of the millennium, right? So an average software professional in India spends about 2 hours in traffic time. That turns out to be 10 hours a week, right? 10 hours a week, average I'm talking about. There are people who probably spend more than that. And the first time these software folks have realized, look, I have 10 hours of time with me. And they know for the fact, many of them know for the fact that how much they get paid per hour. Now you see what's happening is that everyone started thinking, and that the thinking is good for the country, good for the economy. But I think in this phase, people who are actually losing the control on a lot of these companies who are basically want people to stick with them or want to hire better resources. What happens is that they don't really are ready to take up. For example, we're having ourselves a few challenges of attracting talent, and they demand so much. Why? Because they know for the fact that along with the job that they're doing, they still have more opportunities. So which means they ask for so much money. The number of micro enterprises, number of freelancers, number of consultants, number of individual people becoming entrepreneurs, and not just creating companies. I'm talking about one-man companies or one-man entrepreneurship, right? That's also picking up a lot. And so I think in this aspect that India will learn the hard way, and people have to go through learn the hard way. All the commitment levels will go up, because if you're in a job, there is scope for you to sort of not be so much dedicated, and still there is a room for error and all of that. But yeah, when you know that you're coming to a client, and then no matter what, you have to be 100%. So there is this culture that will help. But I think one of the only key advices that I keep even telling my the people in network, when people want to get into entrepreneurship, is that don't get into it just simply thinking that you would make extra money, and if you do that, I think it is not sustainable. I think get into whatever you want to pick it up, whether it's the same thing or do something else, or you want to sell idlis or dosa, doesn't matter what you want to do. But fundamentally, please understand, whatever you do, keep only one thing, that you are chasing the excellence in it, and let the money chase you. Don't chase the money at all, right? So you take a project, if they're not paying you, but you know for the fact that you're able to drive a fantastic thing out of it and get something out of it to showcase to the world for great learning, do it. That's important, right? So that is, I think, we should be open to it. That element of being too greedy about and being too finicky about the what am I going to get paid for everything. When you start your journey in entrepreneurship is not good. Once you move that phase to a next level, that's when you demand for it. Right. That's the right way. So otherwise you would lose your I would say not just the name in the market, but otherwise the whole intensity to do entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved what you said about money versus who's chasing who. This is again something that I've always maintained. You shouldn't be chasing money, and you should do things such that money chases you. And what you end up doing is, again, something that we've discussed a lot in the initial part of our conversation. It goes back to what is your purpose, what is it that you enjoy doing, are you solving a real need, or are you just chasing money metrics or other materialistic goals? I think it
Yes.
all is kind of a manifestation of the same sort of issues at the core, and that again ties in very well to the spirituality and the
Yeah.
MBT model that you spoke about.
No, I think in fact India, as a society or as an economy, we've never been able to actually reward creative people, right? And I would say creative talent, right? People say, oh, should we pay so much? Right? I think that is going to be addressed through all of this. People value now. People value now.
No, absolutely, and I think that will form the bedrock of the boom in the gig economy or the freelancers economy, which was anyway slated to happen, and we've been hearing about the impending boom in that space for quite a few years now. I think with the pandemic and with the new normal, whatever the new normal is, one of the crucial components will be the rise of these freelancers, the gigsters, the solopreneurs, etc.
Correct.
And these could be full-time people, these could be they could be doing this full-time, or they could just be doing part-time as a hustle alongside their jobs in which they probably do not find meaning. So I guess there is something in it for everybody in the times to come.
Yes, definitely. I think
So
companies should also embrace culture of letting their own team members do whatever they want, as long as the teams are delivering what company wants. So I think if you start building the culture, I think that's a good, free and liberated culture, right?
right. So thanks, Winnie, for this fascinating conversation and beautiful insights, which I'm sure will resonate with a very wide spectrum of audiences, whether they are budding entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs, employees, potential freelancers, gigsters, or people just watching things from the sideline and thinking about the future of work, the future of society, etc. So thanks once again for this. We'll be putting up a post, and the link to the post will be provided in the description. So please do look up the description to this video in the YouTube channel, and also hit the like and subscribe button, and do share your comments on what you feel about some of the things that Vinny shared with us. Any closing comments, Vinny, from your side?
In fact, Rajiv, thanks so much for doing this, because I must admit that this is one of the first conversations that I've had on the record about MBT. Might not be in time. I don't even sort of talk about it openly with anyone. That includes my wife and anyone in my family. So it's very much personal. But I think over a time I realized that you have to have some path. That path helps you drive high performances, and then you can absorb as much as you want, right? They say that, right, as you grow in the career, as you take larger roles, you take a lot of you work less, but you take a lot in the mind, right? And for especially, I think that's important. So thanks for the conversation, I would say, and especially for covering the MBT part of it. So hope this initiative that you have taken forward with bringing some of the people like us and like you and like everyone who can contribute and say something will make and definitely a lot of difference and reach more people. Congratulations on that, and thanks for everyone behind this.
Yeah, thanks, Vinny. And yeah, I guess that's the beauty of these conversations. For example, the MBT that's probably there inside of you, but you've not shared with people. I think and I'm so happy to hear this, because this is the core purpose of what we are trying to do, to get people to share their insights and experiences, which are otherwise not, heard or spoken about. And the irony is that despite the plethora of content that is out there, and content is exploding like anything these days, but meaningful content where people are sharing their authentic selves, sharing their insights and experiences through which they grow themselves and also help others grow, is something that is becoming more and more of a rarity. So we felt very strongly that we should do something along these lines, and we are happy that we are at least proceeding in the right direction, and helping people through these sort of initiatives. Good to see that it aligns and resonates both with our speakers as well as our audiences, Vinny.
Thank you so much.